So hello everyone and welcome to our virtual cocktail hour WebEx. My name is Chantal Lazon and I'm a marketing partner with NECS. We're really excited to have you all here today and to be able to teach you how you can protect your companies from that inevitable click. The event will be focused on cybersecurity solutions and managed network solutions. Our presentation is filled with great insights and tangible takeaways as well. And we've also worked hard to simplify the data so that it'll be easy for you to understand and easy for you to digest during this presentation. However, we definitely invite you to use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and we'll be paying attention to that throughout. And you can go ahead and do that at any point. We do want this to be a very conversational event, so we welcome any and all questions or comments that you have during this webinar. I also just wanted to let you know before we get started, at the very end of the presentation, we will be holding a Q&A session, and all participants anyone who participates in the Q&A session will be automatically put in a draw for a chance to win a $50 gift card for either Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, so I think now that we've got some of those housekeeping items out of the way, I would like to introduce you to Dennis Sasso, Digital Solutions Specialist at NECS. Take it away, Dennis.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chantel. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well on this lovely, sunny, warm day here up in the greater Boston area. I want to thank you for attending the NECS Virtual Cocktail Hour event. This month, the event is focused on cybersecurity, as Chantel mentioned. For those of you who are not familiar with our company, NECS is a locally based, locally owned company. We are the largest independent solutions provider in New England. We have 7 locations, and we're just celebrating our 57th year of success in business. Our focus primarily is technology and providing solutions to help our customers deal with today's challenges, ranging from print to digital document conversion to what we're discussing today, which are IT solutions, specifically cybersecurity. I'm thrilled to introduce you to one of our premier partners, Network Coverage. We're lucky to have a cybersecurity expert with us today, and she's going to speak about the issue that most of us are facing today, cybersecurity threats. Network Coverage also is a locally based company. They've been providing IT solutions nationwide since 1996. Our presenter today, who is one of the industry's foremost experts on cybersecurity, will be sharing information on how to reduce your exposure to unauthorized entry, and also discuss potential issues that face today's workplace, again, all around those threats. So hopefully you've all received your cocktail. I invite you to sit back, relax, enjoy your cocktail, while I introduce Bridget Wilson, who is the Vice President of Information Services for NetCov. And again, she's going to discuss this valuable info with you. I do want to make a comment. We want to make this as relaxed an event as possible. So I do encourage you to engage with questions, comments during the event, just as you would if we were sitting at a round table having a cocktail or two. So again, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your time. And I'd like to introduce and hand it off to Bridget Wilson. Bridget, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Dennis. You are far too kind. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now for you. And you should see my slides. So everybody, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Cocktail Hour. Not sure if this is the first ever, probably not, but we're going to enjoy our beverages and talk about cyber, more specifically the human factor and how we protect ourselves from the inevitable click. I'm Bridget Wilson. Obviously, as Dennis mentioned, I'm with Network Coverage. As you know, we're a technology services provider delivering IT and managed cybersecurity to companies across the US. We support businesses of all sizes and in many different industries. And what's interesting about that is that regardless of how diverse our clients may be, they all seem to share a common vested interest in cybersecurity and protecting their organization. conversations we have with small and medium business owners are often the same dialogue discussed inside of the corporate board meeting. We're all inundated, and you may be sick of hearing the word cybersecurity. I'm not, that's my job. And all the related buzzwords that go along with it. Every day there's a new company hit by ransomware on the news. But how does this impact us as private citizens? How does this affect us as employees? And how does that affect us as business owners and executives? And what should we be doing about it? And what does it even mean? You might be used to seeing common tips and training. We in the IT industry call what our user-facing best practices. I personally do a ton of cybersecurity awareness training for network coverage clients, for their staff. Those could be people in the office. Those can be people out in the field on construction sites. It's basically just a set of rules, guidelines, words to live by, advice that anyone can take home, regardless of what their role is, internalize, practice throughout their day-to-day. I, for one, am a very big fan of practice what you preach. And of course, I'm happy to report that every email I open has been scanned. Every link I click on has been sandboxed. Every account password I create is unique, complex, and they all expire within 30 days. Do you believe me? No? Okay. Well, I admit it. I am human after all, so you're probably right. I'm going to kick it to Chantel for our first poll question. And I believe you have a pop-up on your screen. Everybody is free to interact here. I really want to gauge what the response is. And I'll read the question. How do you store passwords? And be honest. A, keep them in a notebook. B, I have them all memorized. C, I just use the same password for everything. Or D, I use a password manager. This is interesting, actually. I expected we would have less of a variety of answers here, but this is good. We have about 94% participation. 31% keep them in a notebook. Okay. 6%, I have them all memorized. I don't believe you. 13% just use the same password for everything. Or 50%, I use a password manager. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. And everybody, I think, was pretty honest there, so thank you. Let's see, it looks like I can share my results here on the screen. That's what we're looking at, and that's great. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. So where are we going from here? And why did we talk about how individuals store their passwords? Interestingly, it's really varied in this case, right? And to my next point, the human factor is arguably the biggest threat to our security. Chantel, can you see my PowerPoint? You can see those slides, right?
I see the weakest link in cybersecurity.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really what I'm getting at here. Our security is multifaceted. So we already know that our own personal data is exposed to some extent on social media, right? Sometimes we find out that our credit card data was exposed, and that happened in the latest retail breach. I know there was a Target one that happened and a TJ Maxx one that happened, and the list goes on and on. Our company data, it may live on a server in our office, it may live in the cloud, or maybe it gets saved to our laptop. This is a convenience, obviously, so we don't need to use a VPN when we're running around outside the office. Even the security of our nation is only as foolproof as the weakest link. Government employees run into the same challenges we do. We can implement all the bells and whistles, every variety of account protection mechanism that's available to us, and inevitably, at some point, humans will click. And it's not because we have malicious intent, like this guy. It's not because we want to take down a colleague or a boss who rubbed us the wrong way. In cybersecurity, we talk a lot about the potential insider threat. And I always picture this hacker dude. I mostly just wanted to use this image somewhere in a presentation. So that's the guy, right? He's the enemy. But no, in reality, we humans are just really, really busy multitasking our way throughout our entire day. I may have calls scheduled back to back, but during lunch, I'll run out to pick up my daughter from school when she has a half day. Every time I look back at my inbox, there are a ton of new messages. Most of them, or many of them, are marked urgent. And then when I have a free moment, I've got to schedule my next dentist appointment. I've got to start Christmas shopping. It's September already. Donate to the school fundraiser, take my car for an oil change. You see where this is going, right? 95% of all successful cyber attacks are caused by human error. In a perfect world, we would all do the right thing all the time, but that's not our world. People are the weakest link in the security chain. And now that we've accepted this, let's talk about what comes next. When Joe in accounting calls the IT department to say he clicked on a strange looking email, he entered his password into what looked like a login page, what comes next? What layers of protection do we have in place to stop a ransomware attack in its tracks or before it even starts? My favorite answer to this question is simply implement security in layers. The security in layers approach means that we assume that something will go wrong and we plan for what's next. At a 10,000-foot view, we can put this strategy into 4 buckets, or a checklist for preparedness, if you will. Proactive strategy, planned response, robust backups, and disaster insurance. That's it. 4 things to remember, 4 directives to discuss with your planning board, 4 questions to relay to your IT team, and don't be afraid to ask. We love those questions, trust me. If we don't have a plan in place, the idea of ransomware feels daunting. And every time we see a story on the news, we feel threatened because we don't want to be next. We never want to be the low-hanging fruit, caught off guard, caught unprepared. My goal tonight is to demystify ransomware as a trending topic and help everyone in this room understand how it works. Then let's put a plan in place to prevent a successful attack. Now, starting at the top of this list with implementing proactive controls, believe me, there's no shortage of tools, alerts, services, you name it, you can spend company dollars on it. But how do you know what's worth your company spend? To start, there are plenty of mechanisms that are included with the hardware and services you already pay for. We just need to make sure these features are enabled. As a cybersecurity provider, I've walked into environments with state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line infrastructure, the most expensive hardware and software you can buy, yet the login passwords are set to the same well-known company password, the one that's been reused since the company bought its first computers back in 1982. Now, this password is used for every new employee's email, the guest Wi-Fi network, printers, firewalls, warehouse video surveillance, the CEO's personal safe. Just kidding, hopefully, because it's easy to remember. And remember, we're all super busy humans. So that's our first proactive defense, password policy. How do we implement it? Use complex, unique, expiring passwords wherever possible. In standard user awareness training, we talk about password best practices, so I won't take you back down that path, but let's just make sure we toggle on the switch for strong passwords, change the default username and password when you roll out a new system. Passwords don't have to be so complex that we can't remember them or that we have to write them down on a sticky note, but they should be long and they should be memorable, if only to us. If we're enforcing these settings for our tools and accounts, why not provide a password manager so nothing has to be memorized? There are a lot of tools on the market. I'm sure you heard the names LastPass, 1Password, Dashlane, the list goes on and on and on. Every client that I speak to, usually a question that comes out of our awareness presentation, how do we store our passwords if they all have to be different? As an organization, make sure that your staff has a password manager. You manage it from the organizational level. If someone leaves the company, they leave and you retain the passwords. They don't take them with them. So that's an aside, and I can talk more about that if anybody's curious. Bottom line here is we assume that all passwords are going to be compromised at some point, regardless of what you do. We can rest assured that if we create expiring passwords, the attacker will seek to have access if the password was compromised eventually. So there is an element of checks and balances. When someone who should not have access to an account will actually be locked out of it. We should avoid using shared accounts. The shared scanner account, something we all know and love. I personally encounter that all the time while onboarding new clients. Thankfully, the shared scans folder that sits somewhere on the network, accessible to every single employee, it just seems to be going away now that people are doing scan to email. So that's good news.
Bridget, I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute. It looks like Dennis has the hand up.
Sure. Go for it, Dennis.
Thanks, Chantel. Hey, Bridget, I have two quick comments / questions. How often should we be changing our passwords?
Go for it.
And secondly, what is an ideal setup for a password? I mean, how names, dollar signs, I mean, things like that nature. What should that be inclusive of when you're creating a password?
Well, I'll tell you my secret to success. First off, the password change recommendation officially from the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is one of the most well-recognized commercial or private sector frameworks. It steals a lot from government compliance frameworks, but it's a little lighter, fortunately. The official recommendation is 90 days. A lot of clients say that's too frequently. They go in and they have to deal with it. It's a pain in the butt for whatever reason. I'm always okay with 180. I even have clients who say, can we change it once a year? Yes, it's really up to the company to decide what works best for them. However, just, with that note of caution that if the password is compromised, we assume it's going to happen at some point. A lot of people get phished. Do you want the person to retain access for the full 365 days if that wasn't caught? Or is it better to have them cut off within 90 days? So that's my spiel on length of time. Passwords that are easy to remember but complex. I usually go with a song lyric. And I probably shouldn't say that because people are going to steal my idea or try to hack me. But if I have a song stuck in my head that day, my password's expiring, I'm going to grab like 3 or 4 words out of the chorus, and maybe I'll put a $, some numbers, switch it up a little. But the idea is if I grab 3 or 4 words, I'm going to have a 16-character password that's going to be pretty hard to crack with brute force. But at the same time, I can remember it because it's a song. So stay away from kids' names, pets' names, sports teams. You live in Boston, everybody's going to try Bruins 1 or Bruins 1, 2, 3 or Red Sox. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I personally, I'm guilty. I don't think I've changed my passwords in 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about. It's, we're all in the same boat. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I
sure.
also just wanted to let you know, it looks like Sue Adams has their hand up as well. So I'm just going to allow Sue to talk here. All right, go ahead, Sue.
Hi, if we have a 2FA system in place, is it okay to go to 180 days or 360 days?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. It's okay. However, if you have 2FA for your email, and your password gets phished because you clicked on something that came into your inbox. You type in your password. That MFA is going to stop the attacker from getting into your email account. But what if and they're actually this smart, right? They can say, I know this Sue's email address and I know her password now. I'm going to go to Facebook and try logging in there. And if you don't have MFA on something else that they try, but you've reused that password, that's when they're going to get in. And they've figured that out at this point. So still, I'd say the expiration is still pretty important, even if you do have MFA on some of the systems.
We have 2FA to actually log into our remote virtual systems. And then we have another 2FA system in place for our emails.
Perfect.
So, okay.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to get to that too.
Okay. Sorry.
Awesome.
Oh, you're good. No, that's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. And I also, Dennis had his hand up, but it looks like he took it away for now. Might have just answered his question.
All right. So this slide coming up is one of my favorites, right? I'm sure everybody here heard about this one, the Colonial Pipeline hack. Happened in May of 2021. It caused a major shutdown in service delivery. It resulted in shortages and increased gas prices ahead of a major holiday weekend in the upcoming summer months. The root cause, and I'm just going to read right off the slide here, the hack that took down the largest fuel pipeline in the US and led to shortages across the East Coast was the result of a single compromised password. Hackers gained entry into the networks of Colonial Pipeline Co. on April 29 through a virtual private network account, that's a VPN, which allowed employees to remotely access the company's computer network. The account was no longer in use at the time of the attack, but could still be used to access Colonial's network. In light of this, we need to ask ourselves how many shared accounts, unused accounts, or stale accounts are still active in our own company networks. Will those passwords expire after 90 days, or will they be active forever? When that scanner account that we talked about was set up, did we make it an admin account so we could scan to any folder we wanted? Did we copy that account from another user who had VPN access? Inadvertently, this would allow a user called Scanner to connect from outside the office with a VPN to any folder in the network and have administrative access over those files. Sadly, upon examination, this is true in almost every new client environment I encounter. And without a healthy audit from time to time, we tend to forget what accounts exist and why. Implementing a policy requiring unique accounts with complex expiring passwords and account disablement at time of termination would have prevented the Colonial Pipeline hack, period. So is that all that we need to do? Of course not. That presentation would be way too short. But the password policy is the first line of defense, and in most cases, requires zero company spend to implement. But when is an expiring password not enough? If we remember the human factor and we assume that passwords will be compromised, it's never enough. I, for one, don't like the idea, like I said, of someone having access to my accounts for the next 90 days after I get phished. So what's next? Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. This is what Sue was asking about. And I cannot stress enough the importance of this particular layer of protection. 2FA or MFA uses two or more of the following to verify your identity. Something you know, a password, something you have, a cell phone or a mobile device, or something you are, which would be a unique biometric feature. It could be a fingerprint or a scan of your iris. If and when your password is compromised, a bad actor can only use it if they also have your cell phone, your finger, or your eyeball. And Minority Report comments aside, it's unlikely an iris scan will be spoofable anytime in this decade. But remember the comments I made about low-hanging fruit? Bad actors are lazy. And if they manage to steal a password protected by MFA or 2FA, rather than spend more time or energy trying to reroute your text messages or clone your cell phone, they're going to move on. For every account with MFA enabled, there are plenty more without, and those accounts are the low-hanging fruit. Chantel, our next poll question, right along the lines of MFA 2FA. Okay, where have you enabled MFA? A, my work email because it forces me. B, all of my work accounts, email, VPN, and payroll. C, what is MFA? Or D, work and home, all of my bank accounts, utilities, PayPal, Venmo, you name it. Let's see what we get for responses here. We're at about 47%. Let's give it another minute. I like where this is going. All right, let's get our answers in, guys. I think we're almost there. Okie dokie. Here are your results. 7% said my work email because it forces me, and that's a very honest answer. 36%, all of my work accounts, email, VPN, and payroll. 21%, what is MFA? We're going to talk about that. And 36% work and home, all of my bank accounts, utilities, PayPal, Venmo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My favorite answer, obviously, is D. Here you go, guys. MFA is really vital. And the point of this poll is exactly that. It's vital for all types of accounts. This includes internal accounts, company email and VPN, but it also includes external accounts or third-party accounts. Think of your sensitive logins, even the ones you have for work that might not be tied into your Windows password. We've got things like Constant Contact, LinkedIn, bank accounts, payroll, HR, so on and so on. My clients and colleagues will attest that I could go on and on about password policy, MFA, spend another 45 minutes doing so, but I will do everyone a favor here and curb myself. Simply stated, password policy and MFA are the simplest and most effective method of protecting corporate accounts and are often the most overlooked. Let's talk more about proactive controls, and let's back up a little bit here. If we can't prevent our staff from clicking on bad links 100% of the time, how do we prevent phishing email and malicious content from ever reaching their inbox to begin with? A spam filter is essential for blocking unsolicited messages that contain malicious links, attachments, and phishing attempts. There are a ton of competing solutions on the market, and you don't have to break the bank. In fact, most cloud email providers, Office 365 and G Suite, for example, offer their own filter. The only catch is that you just have to turn it on and configure it. It's there, but you got to tell it how to work. What happens next when a message containing a malicious link or attachment is delivered to your inbox? If you look at the link in the screenshot, ask yourself, do you always hover before you click on something that might point to, say, russianmafia.ru/steal your money/ for God's sake, don't click? If only they were all that obvious. And just in case we do click before we hover, our corporate devices must rely on the next critical layer of defense. Our last line of defense, you could say, is what we refer to as advanced endpoint protection. It's really just a suite of tools and tactics that are used to learn about, detect, alert upon, and remediate threats targeting our corporate networks and our devices. Endpoint detection and response, or EDR, is really the backbone of network coverage's managed cybersecurity toolset. Everyone here is used to having an antivirus installed on their computers. Familiar names like Webroot, Norton, McAfee, Kaspersky. What EDR tools add to the equation is machine learning. While traditional antivirus products update once a day, they scan against a list of known bad files. EDR products update in real time, and instead they scan for behavioral indicators of malicious activity. So maybe a previously unseen file running for the first time on a computer, it's not going to appear on a blacklist with your regular antivirus, but the moment that it moves laterally and starts reaching out to other machines on the network, it gets flagged and stopped in its tracks. EDR is designed to work in real time. At its best, it can remediate malware in the middle of the night, restoring a machine and allowing an employee to return to their desk the next morning, unaware that a crisis was averted. Now for story time. We were engaged, network coverage was engaged by a company in spring of 2020. This was immediately following a ransomware outbreak that had taken their entire corporate network offline. My team was working the forensics angle, while some of our colleagues worked on recovering servers from all that was left, which essentially amounted to backups that were about 6 months old. What we found and we determined to be the root cause was a phishing email. It was designed to look like it was from a company employee, although it actually came from someone outside the company. It was sent to a number of employees who clicked on a link inside the body of the email, something that looked like a SharePoint file download. This link in the email opened a browser. It went to a web page that started immediately downloading the Emotet Trojan. There was no prompt and no pop-up. And if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't even notice that there was a download occurring. This case was particularly interesting because a number of security controls, had they been implemented, could have prevented this outcome. We know that no control is 100% effective all the time, but in this case, the attack could have been stopped by spam filtering, blocking the email so it never got to the users, multi-factor authentication, blocking the attacker's VPN access if the user's credentials did get phished, or by EDR software blocking the lateral movement of the network commands. That's if all else failed and the malware was actually downloaded on the endpoint. So that's checkbox 1 in a nutshell. And I promise you, I'm looking at the clock, checkbox 2, 3, and 4 are much more concise. When all of the proactive controls fail, we need to know what to do and who to call. So our next poll question, Chantel, if you wouldn't mind. Which statement about your organization's response plan is most accurate? Option A, what is an incident response plan? Option B, when an incident occurs, we'll come up with a plan. Option C, we have a document, it was drafted a few years ago, it's somewhere. Option D, we have an IRP, we review it every year, and we walk through tabletop exercises. I like these responses. I can see some honesty here, guys. This is good. Awesome. We're at 88%. Give it another second here. Cool. Let's check out the responses here. 7%. What is an incident response plan? Honest answer, and we're going to talk about it, so you're good. 13%, when an incident occurs, we'll come up with a plan. Pragmatic, I like it. 60%, we have a document somewhere, it was drafted a few years ago, probably the most common response. And 20%, we have an IRP, we review it every year and walk through tabletop exercises. That's where I'm trying to get all my clients to. So I'd say we're somewhere between C and D. Excellent. Good job, everybody. Let's talk about incident response plans. So basically, this is our planned response, and it's not just obviously a policy that we want to draft and stick in a file cabinet. Most regulatory bodies require a high-level incident response plan, which would include elements like detection and reporting, triage and analysis, containment and restoration, and lessons learned. What's most important but often overlooked are roles and responsibilities, the technical steps to restore from backups, how to gather forensic data for litigation, and how and when to report the incident to authorities. Rather than or in addition to just building a boilerplate incident response plan that will gather dust on a shelf, we should be gathering key stakeholders and talking through real and potential threats to our company today and in the future, because those things can change year after year. Our incident response plan in 2019 didn't say anything about a pandemic, but today it does, which is great. Figure out who's going to fill the role of incident response lead in the event of an incident. Who will communicate with the staff? Who will communicate with your clients? Who will communicate with the media? Who will document the steps taken and document chain of custody in case your evidence needs to hold up in court? Does your company have a legal team or someone who can refer you to one? If a compromise has occurred, determining whether there was a breach of sensitive or protected data and reporting the findings to your state or federal government might be required and is likely required within a specific time frame. Massachusetts is a little more lenient, surprisingly, than other states. But for the most part, we're looking at maybe 72 hours to report. Incident stakeholder roles may change and company leadership may change, but your plan should be rehearsed and rehashed and updated to reflect these changes. And we'd want to do that at least annually. The ability to recover quickly and unharmed from a cybersecurity incident is dependent upon having a well-rehearsed plan in place. Our next checkbox, see, we're flying right through them. Backups. Backups are key to an effective incident response and recovery. We can't execute our incident response plan if we don't have any backups. I mentioned a company that engaged us back in 2020. We had to recover their entire network of servers and all of their laptops and workstations from backups that were around 6 months old. Sadly, this is pretty common, and in most cases, it's the result of untested or inadequate backups. In some cases, backups are stored on the same network that was hit by the virus. So those are gone. All too often, we assume that backups are running as scheduled, and it's possible for images to corrupt. It is possible for backup tasks to fail or backups to be completely wiped out before a virus is even detected, which would make it impossible to restore to a known good state. Biggest takeaway from this slide is when is the last time your company checked its backups? When is the last time your company ran through a disaster recovery test? And that can be something complex. It can be something as simple as, hey, we have a backup. Let's spin it up in a sandbox and see if we can open programs and files. And your IT company can, of course, help you with that. We've arrived at checkbox number 4, disaster insurance, and more specifically, cybersecurity insurance. It's the coverage we purchase to protect our companies in the event of an unrecoverable disaster. When the backups fail, there is often no choice but to negotiate and pay the ransom, as much as we want to avoid this. If and when the negotiating with the attacker remains the only option, cybersecurity insurance providers will engage a crisis response team that consists of legal advisors, forensic investigators, designated negotiators. These people are well-versed and skilled at bartering, and they can make Bitcoin payment transactions on the dark web. Contact with the attacker should only ever be initiated by a trained negotiator under the guidance of a legal team. And I cannot express strongly enough that an insurance policy covering the ransom is not the same as having backup assurance. There's no guarantee that the attacker will actually deliver a working decrypt key that will restore your data, regardless of how much Bitcoin you pay them. And then regardless of the outcome, in the event of an attack, it's always imperative that you determine the root cause. And you want to just quickly shore up any gaps in your network and your security program. Ransomware victims, once it happens, those companies remain a target for repeated attacks over the next 6 months to a year, or even longer, really until the attacker gets bored and moves on. So that's it, guys. That was a mouthful, but that's really what we consider a good base plan. Including our 4 checkboxes: proactive strategy, planned response, robust backups, and disaster insurance. NECS has been kind enough to highlight network coverage as a strategic alliance partner. Thank you. We are obviously, as a service provider, we're working on the bleeding edge. We're here to provide tips and guidelines to improve and harden your cybersecurity program. That's what we do. Whether your company falls into small, medium business or enterprise realm, the strategic implementation of these security controls across the organization is the key to ensuring your continuity of operations. And that's all when the inevitable click happens. Guys, I'm going to toss it back to Chantel for our Q&A. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bridget. That was really informative. I was sitting here writing notes myself. It was really helpful.
I can send out the slides, actually,
yes.
if that helps. Yeah, because there's a lot there.
Yeah, it was really, really helpful. Thank you. I learned a lot. But yeah, so I think we've got enough time right now. We want to be respectful of everyone's time, but it's 4:47 here. So I think we've got a great amount of time if anyone has any questions. Just a reminder that if anyone who participates in this Q&A session will be automatically entered into a draw for a chance to win a $50 gift card to either Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. Also, I do see a couple hands coming up, so I'll call on you in just a moment. But the winner will be an email will be sent to them, I think, after this by probably Dennis Sasso. So the first person we've got, Laura, it looks like. I'm going to allow you to talk here. Go ahead, Laura.
Hi, sorry, I'm driving in the car right now, but I just had a question about the password manager. I was hoping maybe either you could go over how you get that kind of technology for the company, or what's the best route for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the one that I always go back to, a good example is called LastPass. It's actually free for anybody. If you have a single account and you have it installed on a single computer, it's totally free. Now, the problem with that is a lot of companies that I personally interface with don't want to spend the money to purchase a password manager. So they say, well, people can get their own and store all their passwords in there. If it's not a company-owned password manager, that person is going to retain all of those usernames and passwords when they leave the company. So they can be terminated or, leave under good terms, whatever. But, if they sign back into that free password manager they got on their own, they're still going to be able to get into your HR, your payroll, whatever they had access to. So what I always recommend is, obviously this is something you can purchase online. You can purchase through a reseller, but you'd want to purchase a password manager for Teams or for Enterprise, something like that, one of the higher tiers. It's going to come with an admin console, and you can set up users in your company. And then when someone leaves the company, you can just terminate their account. You can't actually see what their passwords are. So tell your staff that it's completely vaulted and secure. All we're doing is provisioning an account for each employee. And then when they leave the company, we terminate the account. And hopefully if their passwords are complex enough, they're not going to remember them and take them with them.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. I'm just going to enable here. Perfect. All right. It looks like we've also got a couple more. Mitch Hamilton, I'm going to allow you to speak here. Go ahead, Mitch.
Hi there. Just a quick FYI. on cyber insurance. So if your company requires a cyber insurance clause in any new vendor contracts, you may see anything from $1 to $5 million. Make sure that some of that's allocated to you. We recently had a breach where that money was allocated to 34 people. So it was sort of like a money grab at the beginning, and once that 3 million or so is gone, there's nothing left for the others. I just want to just give a friendly reminder about that.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. I do a lot of reviewing policies and premiums, on behalf of our clients, and they say, well, we don't know, what we need for coverages. Can we just go with the lowest premium? And it's like $100,000. To be quite honest, the example I gave of the ransom payout in 2020 was 800,000, and that was negotiated down from $1 million in Bitcoin. So if that company hadn't had $1 million coverage, they would have been SOL, unfortunately. But yeah, you want to look very carefully, and I will say it's a little bit of the Wild West right now with cyber coverage. So you want to look carefully at the line items. Sometimes they're worded differently, but you want to make sure that you're fully coveraged for business email compromise. You're fully coveraged for wire fraud. And it's not just, like a cybersecurity coverage that doesn't include those things. So read the small print too.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Mitch. I am going to bring it over to Sue now. Go ahead, Sue.
Hey, are there any new threats or trends that you foresee on the horizon that we should be aware of? It's just a little heads up.
Oh yeah. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. We're having a quarterly meeting coming up, and I'm wanted to do part of the presentation on trends and things maybe out there that we need to be aware of, as well as going over what the processes that we have in place to ensure that we're good now. But just sometimes it helps if there's things out there that you can give people a little heads up beforehand.
Oh yeah. 3 things pop to mind right away. The first is gift card scams, going into the holiday season, especially. Any text message that says, hey, so-and-so, it's your boss, the company owner, and I'm stuck in a meeting. I really need you to buy me $500 worth of gift cards. Okay. That's a big one, and people fall for it because it's kind of like the sense of urgency. Here's a request from somebody really important, and they're pushing me to do it today. I better just do it and not ask. So that's a big one. Along the line of texts, there is something that's now being called smishing, which is SMS phishing, which means you're going to get a text. I just got one this morning from a bank, DCU credit union. I don't even have an account there, but I got a text that said my account was compromised. So if I wasn't paying attention, I would probably think, well, I don't think I have DCU, but let me just click on it. And then I go in and, it takes me to a login page. And if I had DCU and I entered my credentials, there you go. So phishing isn't just email. We're getting a lot of text message phishing. And then the last example along those lines too is MFA fatigue is a thing now. So we've got a lot of us have authenticators on our phone, and that will pop up when I'm trying to get into my Office 365 account. I get a pop-up on my phone. I just accept the prompt and I'm in. So I do that probably 5 times throughout the day. If I'm not paying attention, I wasn't actually trying to log in anywhere. It just popped up and I hit it and it was a reflex. So that's how attackers are getting in now. So one thing that we're recommending is disabling any sort of push notification. If you allow authenticator apps to be used on a phone, make sure that the person has to actually go in, get a code and enter it when they're logging in. And it's not just a push notification. Because we're busy humans.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. All righty. I guess we'll give it maybe if one or two other people. Oh, I see a comment here in the Q&A. Looks like someone had mentioned, Bridget, that they had a client whose email address was hacked and emails were sent out to her contact list, including them, which is James, asking for assistance ordering from Amazon. We notified the client, who told us she was aware, but those on her contact list had sent over $1,000 to the hacker before she notified them of the hack. Is there a way to prevent this?
That's honestly, it's so tricky. At the very base of it, all the controls we talked about, making sure that our accounts are secured, because essentially when you see something like this, there's email spoofing, which means I could send an email from any domain and make it look like it was from another domain or email address. So even if the client was not hacked, someone could have, if they knew the client's contacts or associates, sent out an email that looked like it came from that person, requesting the assistance ordering gift cards. So it is really tricky. I think that really the honest answer is just making sure that you have those controls in place. I also recently have been recommending that my clients put a little tagline in their email signature. Some of the scams we see frequently now are trying to reroute payments. So an attacker might get in the middle of an email conversation and say, oh, by the way, we changed our ACH deposit address, and this is the new one. So I usually recommend that my clients put a tagline in their email signature. We will never request that you change our deposit accounts or forms of payment via email. Please call to follow up. For something like this, you could honestly just go with, be aware of cybersecurity scams. I will never ask for purchase of a gift card or ask you to change a payment account. If you have any questions, please call our office directly. Something like that. And I will say, if you do have cybersecurity coverage and there's, the loss is on behalf of your company, if you report to most banks now that you sent a payment to the wrong account, usually inside the US, if you report within 72 hours, you can get your money back. The bank will freeze that and refund. So, know what's going on, be on top of it, and reach out as quickly as you can to the bank, or, report the issue to IT so they can help with that.
Okay, great. It looks like we're getting pretty close to the time here. So I'll see if we'll just wait maybe a minute here, see if anyone else has any other questions, and then I think we'll close off here. Okay, I think looks like you've answered everyone's questions, Bridget. All right, thank you everyone so much for your time and for coming today. I'm gonna pass it off to Dennis Sasso to just give some closing remarks.
Thank you, Chantel. Great job monitoring and managing. Bridget, as always, phenomenal job. Great information. I just want to remind everybody, you had some great questions at the end there. If you need assistance, please, that's why we're here. NECS and network coverage are happy to work with you guys. And I'm going to leave you with this. In addition to the gift cards that Chantel was offering, we'd also like to offer everybody a free network assessment. We're happy to come in, provide you with a free network security assessment. Hopefully we'll be able to not uncover any issues, but if there are any, obviously we'd be happy to help you with that as well. So I'm going to follow up with everybody via an email. And again, can't thank you enough for attending. Anything that we can do for you, my email address is dennis.sasso@necsoffice.com. Please feel free to reach out. And again, I'll follow up with everybody. Hope you all have a great night. Chantel, Bridget, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good night.